It wasn't the darkness that scared Caleb Vance. He had made his peace with the absolute blackness 30 years ago. It was the sound. Deep inside the belly of the Hollow Creek mine, the earth didn't just shift, it screamed.
Ow.
A low, grinding moan that vibrated through the soles of his boots and rattled his teeth. As the timber support beam to his left splintered like a dry twig, Caleb locked eyes with the rookie, a kid barely old enough to shave. In that split second before the roar of falling rocks swallowed the world, Caleb realized that the mountain was finally coming to collect its debt. The alarm clock on the nightstand didn't have to ring. It never did. Caleb Vance was awake at 3:45 a.m., just like he had been every morning since 1954. His body knew the time better than the gears in the clock. He lay there for a moment in the dark, listening to the rhythm of the house settling and the soft, steady breathing of his wife, Martha, beside him. Her breath was the only peaceful sound in his world. In his own chest there was a rattle, a faint wheeze that whistled when he inhaled too deeply. The doctor called it the early stages of pneumoconiosis. Caleb just called it the dust. It was part of the bargain. Gave the mountain your lungs, and the mountain gave you a wage to feed your children. He rolled out of bed, his knees popping with a sound like dry wood snapping. The floorboards were cold against his bare feet as he moved to the kitchen. The ritual was always the same. Coffee, black and strong enough to strip paint. 2 eggs, fried hard. Piece of toast. He ate standing up by the sink, looking out the window into the pitch-black void of the West Virginia morning. There were no stars today, just a heavy, low-hanging fog that clung to the valley floor. Caleb pulled on his work clothes. The denim was stiff, permanently stained with a gray hue that no amount of washing could remove. He laced his boots tight, pulling the leather until it bit into his ankles. These boots were the only thing between him and the jagged floor of the mine. The drive to the Hollow Creek site was silent. His old pickup truck rattled over the gravel roads, the headlights cutting narrow tunnels through the mist. He passed the abandoned tipple at Logan's Ridge, a ghostly skeletal structure of rusted steel that stood as a monument to a mine that had dried up 10 years ago. It was a reminder of what happened when the coal ran out. The town died. When he arrived at the bathhouse, the air was already thick with the smell of wet coal and stale tobacco. The locker room was a sanctuary of sorts, a place between worlds. Men were changing, stripping off the softness of civilian life and putting on the armor of the underground. Hard hats, battery packs, self-rescuers. Morning, Big C. A voice chirped. It was Thomas, the new kid. They called him Rookie mostly, but Caleb tried to use his name. The boy was 22, with eyes that were still too bright and hands that were still too clean. They had a baby on the way and a mortgage he couldn't afford. He was hungry for overtime. Morning, Thomas, Caleb grunted, slamming his locker shut. He looked the boy up and down. His belt was loose. Tighten that battery strap, son. You don't want it snagging on a belt head. They'll drag you in before you can blink. Thomas nodded quickly, fumbling with the buckle. Caleb sighed. He saw too much of himself in the boy. They moved to the cage, the elevator that would drop them 600 feet straight down. The gate clattered shut. The winch engine whined, and the floor dropped out from under them. The descent was fast. The air pressure changed, popping their ears. The temperature rose, becoming humid and heavy. The light of the surface disappeared, replaced by the sterile glow of cap lamps. As the cage hit the bottom, the smell hit them. It was the smell of ancient geology, of sulfur, of diesel fumes, and of sweat. They climbed onto the man trip, the low-slung rail car that would take them 3 miles back to the working face. The ride was jarring. The ceiling, the roof, rushed by just inches above their heads. Caleb sat with his head bowed, his chin on his chest to protect his neck. He closed his eyes and prayed. He wasn't a church deacon, but he prayed every morning on the man trip. Lord, guide my hands. Keep the roof bolt tight. Bring us home to the light. It wasn't a prayer for riches. It was a prayer for 0 accidents. They reached Section 4. This was a retreat mining section. They were pulling pillars, mining out the columns of coal that held the roof up as they backed out of the tunnel. It was the most dangerous work in the industry. You take the support, and you let the mountain collapse behind you in a controlled fall. All right, boys, let's make it pay. The foreman shouted over the roar of the ventilation fans. Caleb walked to the continuous miner, a massive beast of a machine with a rotating drum of steel teeth. He ran his hand over the cold metal, checked the water sprays, get the methane monitor. Thomas was assigned to the shuttle car running the coal from Caleb's machine to the conveyor belt. "Stay sharp, Thomas," Caleb yelled over the noise. "Watch the ribs. This coal is soft today." Thomas gave a thumbs up, his white teeth flashing in the gloom. Caleb engaged the rotors. The teeth spun. He drove the machine into the black wall. 3 hours in, the rhythm took over. Cut, load, reverse. Cut, load, reverse. The dust was thick, swirling in the beams of their lights like a snowstorm of black ice. Caleb wore his respirator, but he could still taste it. It tasted like copper and old earth. While his hands worked the levers, his mind drifted. It was a dangerous habit, but inevitable after 30 years. He thought about the kitchen table. Martha had left a bill on the counter this morning. The heating repair. It was $300 they didn't have. He thought about his daughter, Ellie, who was applying for college in Morgantown. She wanted to be a teacher. She wanted to get out of the hollow. Every ton of coal he cut was a tuition credit. Every hour of overtime was a textbook. That was the trade. He was trading his breath for her future. The darkness down here had a weight to it. It wasn't just an absence of light. It was a physical presence. It pressed against your skin. Up above, the sun was probably breaking through the fog now. The birds would be singing in the oak trees. The creek would be running clear. Down here, the only nature was geology, and geology was indifferent to human life. Caleb looked at the roof. It bolted it well, putting 5-foot steel rods up into the rock to bind the layers together. But the rock in Section 4 was slick-sided, full of polished, slippery surfaces that didn't hold together well. He paused the machine. Something felt off. The airflow had changed. The ventilation curtain fluttered, then sucked inward, then fluttered again. It was subtle. A rookie wouldn't notice. But Caleb felt it on the back of his wet neck. "Hold up," Caleb signaled with his light, waving it side to side. Thomas slammed the brakes on the shuttle car. All the sudden silence was heavy. "What is it, Caleb?" Thomas called out, his voice echoing weirdly. "Listen," Caleb whispered. At first there was nothing. Then they heard it. Pop. Like a gunshot from a mile away. Then another. CR crack. This one was louder, closer. It was the sound of the rock layers separating under the immense pressure of the earth above. "The top is working," Caleb said, his voice calm but tight. "Is it safe?" Thomas asked, looking up nervously at the stone slabs above his head. "It's never safe, son. It's just managed." Caleb backed the miner up a few feet. "Let's set a couple of breaker props, just to be sure." They grabbed the heavy wooden timbers, wedging them between the floor and the roof, hammering them tight. As Caleb swung the sledgehammer, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, the dust in his lungs protesting the exertion. He ignored it, swung again. He thought of Martha again. Something happened. The pension wouldn't be enough. He needed 5 more years. Just 5 more years to get full benefits. He couldn't afford to be scared. Fear made you hesitant, and hesitation got you killed. "All right," Caleb said, wiping sweat and coal slime from his eyes. "Let's get this last cut done before lunch, then we move back." He didn't know it then, but there would be no lunch. The mountain had decided that the negotiation was over. It happened at 11:14 a.m. Caleb was cutting the corner of the pillar. The continuous miner roared, tearing the coal from the seam. The water sprays were hissing, trying to keep the dust down. Suddenly the floor heaved. It wasn't a shake. It was an upheaval, as if a giant fist had punched the tunnel floor from beneath. Caleb was thrown sideways against the steel frame of the machine. Then came the wind. A massive displacement of air caused by falling rock somewhere close. It blew Caleb's hard hat off his head. And then, the sound. It was a roar that erased all thought. It sounded like a freight train colliding with a skyscraper. The roof directly above the shuttle car where Thomas was sitting sheared off. Thomas. Caleb screamed, but he couldn't even hear his own voice. A massive slab of sandstone the size of a school bus detached from the ceiling. It didn't fall flat. It angled down, crashing into the rib side, creating a lean-to shelter against the wall, but blocking the entire tunnel. The lights on the machinery flickered and died. The power cable had been severed. The sudden darkness was total. It was a physical blow. The dust cloud was instantaneous, choking, blinding. Caleb scrambled on his hands and knees, feeling for his hard hat. He found it, clicked the lamp on. The beam cut through the dust like a lightsaber in a sandstorm. Visibility was 0. Thomas. He coughed, the dust coating his throat. Thomas. Sound off. Silence. Just the terrifying sound of smaller rocks dribbling down from the roof. Drip, drip, drip. Caleb crawled forward. He couldn't see the shuttle car. He could only see a wall of rubble where the tunnel used to be. The way out was blocked. They were sealed in. Help me. ... A weak voice. It came from the right, near the rib. La. Caleb scrambled over the jagged rocks, tearing his pants, cutting his palms. He found Thomas. The boy had been thrown clear of the cab by the initial shockwave, but his leg was pinned under a slab of slate. Thomas was screaming now, a high-pitched, terrified sound. My leg. Oh God, my leg. I got you, son. I got you. Shh. Caleb shined the light on the leg. It was bad. The rock was heavy. But the boy was alive. The main roof had held above them, creating a small pocket, a triangle of survival about 20 feet long and 10 feet wide. But the exit was gone. The ventilation was gone. The mountain was still groaning. Time became fluid. Without the hum of the machinery, the silence was aggressive. Caleb worked feverishly for the first hour. He used a pry bar he found in the rubble to try and leverage the rock off Thomas's leg. It wouldn't move. Thomas. I can't lift it, Caleb said, breathing hard. The air was getting hot, stagnant. Don't leave me, Caleb. Please don't leave me. Thomas wept. He was in shock, his face pale beneath the coal dust, streaks of tears cutting white rivers through the black grime. I ain't going nowhere, Caleb said firmly. He sat down next to the boy, leaning his back against the coal wall. We're in a pocket. The rescuers will come. They know we're here. The section boss saw us. Caleb checked his self-rescuer, the emergency oxygen canister on his belt. It was good for 1 hour of walking, or maybe 3 or 4 hours if you sat perfectly still. Don't pop the seal yet, Caleb instructed. Save the air. Shallow breaths, like you're sleeping. They sat in the dark to save battery power. Caleb turned his light off. Talk to me, Caleb, Thomas whispered. It's too quiet. What do you want to talk about? Anything. Tell me about your boat. You always talk about getting a boat. Caleb smiled in the dark. It was a lie he told the guys. He didn't want a boat. He just wanted a porch where he didn't have to cough. Yeah, a bass boat, blue fiberglass. Couldn't take it out on Stonewall Jackson Lake. Just sit there and let the sun burn the top of my head. That sounds nice, Thomas wheezed. I was gonna buy a crib for the baby. Sarah showed me one in the catalog. You will, Caleb said. But he looked at the air quality detector on his belt. The little red light was blinking slowly. Oxygen was dropping, methane was rising. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Caleb's mind began to play tricks on him. The lack of sensory input caused hallucinations. He saw blue sparks dancing in the corner of his eyes. He heard his mother calling him for supper. "Stay awake, Caleb. Stay awake." Thomas had gone quiet. He was drifting. "Thomas," Caleb shook him. "Wake up. I'm tired, Caleb. I know. But you can't sleep. If you sleep, your breathing slows down too much. You might not wake up if the gas gets us." "Tell me about the baby. Is it a boy or a girl?" "We don't know yet," Thomas mumbled. "We wanted it to be a surprise." Caleb felt a tear slide down his cheek. He wiped it away angrily with a gritty hand. He reached into his lunch pail, which he had miraculously dragged with him. He had a sandwich. Bologna on white bread. "Eat this," Caleb said. "I can't. Eat it. You need the energy for the shock." As they sat there, the mountain settled again. A massive boom echoed from the other side of the rockfall. The ceiling above them dusted them with fine powder. Caleb threw his body over Thomas, shielding the boy's head with his own torso. They waited. The dust settled. They were still alive. "Why do we do it, Caleb?" Thomas asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why do we come down here?" Caleb thought about the bill on the counter. He thought about the tuition. He thought about the electricity that powered the hospitals and the schools and the cities far away, where people didn't know what a roof bolt was. "Because we're the only ones who can," Caleb said softly. "Because it's what our fathers did. And because the lights have to stay on, Thomas. The world needs the light, even if we have to live in the dark to get it." Caleb's chest was burning. Pneumoconiosis was tightening his airways like a vice. The stress was making it worse. He was suffocating slowly, not from the mind, but from his own lungs. He realized then that he had two self-rescuers, his own and Thomas's. "Thomas," Caleb said. He turned on his light. The beam was dimming. "Listen to me." He unclipped his own oxygen canister. He cracked the seal. The chemical smell hissed out. "Put this on," Caleb said. "That's yours," Thomas said, eyes widening. "I got good lungs," Caleb lied. "I can hold out. You're hyperventilating. You're using up the air. Put it on." "No, Caleb," I said, "put it on." Caleb's voice was a command, the voice of a father. He forced the mouthpiece into the boy's mouth and clipped the nose clamp shut. Thomas breathed in the pure oxygen. His color returned slightly. Caleb sat back. He didn't open the second canister. He left it on Thomas's belt, just in case. He thought, "If I go, the boy needs to." Caleb was drifting now. The CO2 was building up in his blood. He felt warm, pleasant. The pain in his legs was gone. He saw the kitchen again. Martha was frying bacon. The sun was streaming through the window, bright and yellow. Caleb, a voice, not Martha's. A deep, mechanical voice. Thump, thump. It was a vibration coming from the roof. Caleb's eyes snapped open. He was back in the hellhole. The dark, the dust, thump, thump. "Thomas," Caleb rasped. He slapped the boy's leg. Thomas pulled the mouthpiece out. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "The roof? Someone is pounding on the roof bolts." It was a signal. The rescue team was on the other side of the fall. They were signaling through the rock strata. Caleb grabbed a loose rock. He found the steel roof bolt plate above his head. He smashed the rock against the steel. Clang, clang, clang. He waited, thump, thump. They heard him. Tears streamed down Caleb's face. "They're here, son. They found us." But finding them and getting them out were two different things. It took another 4 hours. 4 hours of listening to the drill, the pickaxes, the voices getting louder. The air was almost gone. Caleb was gasping, struggling for every molecule of oxygen. He was dizzy. His vision was tunneling. Suddenly, a small hole punched through the rubble wall. A beam of light, brighter than anything Caleb had ever seen, shot through. Section 4. Call out. A voice bellowed. "Here." Thomas screamed. "We're here." Men in rescue gear swarmed through the opening like angels in orange suits. They had stretchers. They had oxygen. They lifted the rock off Thomas's leg with hydraulic spreaders. They loaded him onto the stretcher. "I got him," a rescuer said to Caleb. "You okay, old-timer?" Caleb tried to stand, but his legs were jelly. He fell forward. Strong arms caught him. "Got you, Caleb, we got you." They carried him out. The journey back to the man trip, the ride to the elevator, the ascent in the cage. It was a blur. When the cage rose to the surface, the door opened. It was nighttime outside. Floodlights illuminated the pit head. There were ambulances, people, and there was Martha. She broke through the police line. She didn't care about the soot, the blood, or the grime. She threw her arms around Caleb's neck as they loaded him onto the gurney. "I told you," Caleb whispered into her ear, his voice sounding like gravel. "I promised I'd be home for supper. You're late." She sobbed, laughing and crying at the same time. "You're very late." Caleb never went back down, the doctor said. His lungs were done. He took the disability payout. It wasn't a fortune, but combined with the pension, it was enough. 10 years later, Caleb sat on his porch. Didn't have a boat, but he had a rocking chair. The valley was quiet. The Hollow Creek mine had closed down 3 years prior. The tipple was rusting, just like the one at Logan's Ridge. A truck pulled up the driveway. A young man stepped out, walked with a slight limp. It was Thomas. Thomas held the hand of a 10-year-old boy. "Hey, Caleb," Thomas said, walking up the steps. "Hey, rookie," Caleb smiled. Thomas looked at his son. "Timmy, this is Mr. Vance. He's the reason you're here." The boy looked at Caleb with wide eyes. "You were a miner?" the boy asked. Caleb looked at his own hands. They were clean now, but the coal dust was still tattooed into the cuticles, permanent black lines that would never wash away. "Yeah," Caleb said, looking out at the green mountains that covered the hollow tunnels below. "I was a miner. We kept the lights on." He took a deep breath. It rattled, but the air was sweet. And that, Caleb said, was enough.